This is Bible School Radio, KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC, Commerce, and KMWC, Bethany. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, so what is the effect on the market if Vice President Kamala Harris were to become the presidential candidate? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Hey, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Once you get there, you know the drill. Just send it in. I will get your questions answered for you. That's all at the website. And if you need to schedule some time with me, you can do that on a calendar as well. There's no cost and no obligation. Just want to make sure that you are getting the help that you need, and want to make sure Prudent Money is a good resource for you to go to get that information. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. So as you can imagine, the question that getting a lot today is what happens if Vice President Kamala Harris becomes the Democratic presidential candidate? You know, first of all, and I'm sure if you've been following this, it's hard not to, but if you've been following the news channels and whatnot, it's not a foregone conclusion. It's probably the easiest transition now that President Biden has dropped out. They have something like 90, I may be off, a little bit off on this. I think I heard $96 million in a war chest that, according to some sources, that money could be transferred into her campaign easily. According to the Republicans, they're going to fight that legally and declare she can't do that, and so to tie up the money. So it is going to get interesting, that's for sure. I was telling Tony Joe when I talk about this a lot. You know, Tony Joe comes on with me on Special Car Corner Edition on Fridays, and we're always talking about this kind of thing. And if anything at all, we're dramatically seeing history play out in a big way. But you know, the question, whether it's Vice President Harris, whether it's Hillary Clinton, in fact, I think that Kamala Harris, I don't think worries the market that much. Hillary Clinton probably would worry the market a little bit. But it's just really hard to tell what the reaction is going to be, and we're just so, you know, right now, really anything's speculation. But one of the big reasons, let's go a little bit more global. One of these reasons these questions are asked really doesn't have to deal with the candidate as much as it deals with what does this risk, what kind of risk am I taking with my retirement money? I mean, that's what it really comes down to if we look at it globally. And that's what we're going to be doing on Wednesday, just a couple of days from now. And I'm going to be doing a webinar, 12 noon, 30 to 40 minutes, no longer than that. If you want to stick around for questions, you can do that. But I'm going to go through inflation and what you need to know about inflation. And I'm going to stay very global with my information, because I believe that once you sit down with visuals, which we can't do on the radio, that you'll really get an idea of what we're up against. But it's a much bigger picture than that. We need to be aware of what this inflation means. We need to be aware of the future, whether you make changes or don't make changes. I mean, the thing about it is, there is a ton of risk and potential for things to happen. In fact, I saw something on Fox News today that Taiwan was getting ready for an invasion by China, and I can't imagine that would go very well with the market, especially since we would get dragged into that. But if you think about the last week, we've had a president drop out of the election race, out of the presidential race, and which was a process in itself. And we had an ex-president who's running for presidency almost get assassinated by a quarter of an inch. It's just amazing what's going on and what will come of all this. I do believe this, and we'll be talking about this at the webinar, is that dating back to 2008 is when all this really started, what I'm going to be talking about. Because inflation is just a symptom of a bigger picture. And if you divide up our journey, you look at it from the standpoint of pre-financial crisis, financial crisis, which really, if you dated it 2007 to 2009, and then what I call the road to the new normal, which we've been on for, 13, 14 years. And how does that resolve itself? Well, if this plays out like I think it will, I think the next 4 years tells us a lot about what the future foundation of this country is going to be like. And it's going to be important, especially if you had some type of situation such as a Hillary Clinton becoming the Democratic candidate and winning, or even Kamala Harris winning. Probably just about anybody that runs the Democratic side could really usher in a new day, a day that a lot of us wouldn't like. And so I think we're at a major crossroads right now. So it definitely will be interesting. I think that the way that you get peace about all this, the way you really answer that question on risk, is that you have a strategy that you can, and you're very in touch with your investments, what they're doing, and you have a way to manage for that risk. And to me, that's one of the most important aspects of all of this. It doesn't matter what happens because you're ready for it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that on Wednesday as well. So once again, this Wednesday, I can't believe it's already this Wednesday, July 24th at noon. I'm looking forward to this. Really, this information and content I've really wanted to talk about in more of a live setting. So it should be good, and make sure you bring your questions because I want to make sure that to get those answered. But you can sign up on the website. Obviously, there's not a supply and demand problem, being the internet and Zoom, so you can sign up for it there. Had a question come in. Dear Bob, I was having a conversation with my wife about our estate and our wills. She asked me some very pointed questions that I don't have answers for. What do I need to do to have everything up to date? What a very big question. And I would be, to be very candid, I was thinking about this. There are aspects of my own financial plan and questions that my wife asked me that the answer would be, I haven't gotten around to it. I will get around to it. I'll get it taken care of. And I thought to myself, boy, I probably could use a financial advisor. But there are things that even I grapple with. And it's it comes down to priorities. It comes down to really thinking about, am I building a very big risk for my family by not being prepared? And when you start thinking it from that standpoint, you start thinking at it from the standpoint of, we're not promised tomorrow. We're not even promised. Well, all we have is what we have in front of us. And are we ready for tomorrow, whenever tomorrow might come? So I want to talk a little bit about that. And if you are in that situation, which I would imagine a lot of people are in that situation who are listening, if you're not driving, grab a pen or a pencil and take some notes, because I think this is an important conversation to have. But there's an important process that you go through to make sure this gets done right. What do you need to do? The first thing that you need to do to make sure that everything is up to date, to make sure that that your wishes are carried out, to most importantly make sure that your family is completely taken care of, and you're not leaving them in a situation. I've dealt with this many times. I've walked through situations with spouses who just lost their husband or their wife, and walked through the process of trying to figure out where everything was, where the life insurance was, where the policies, how much life insurance do we have, and it's a tough conversation to have with your spouse. I get that. One of the most important ones that you can do, and the good news is you don't have to do it but one time. And I'm going to talk about on the other side of the break a way that you can get all this taken care of for you, and you can go to bed at night with a lot of peace. It's good that your spouse is not going to have any problems. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. We're up against a break. Stick around, and I'll be right back. Hi, this is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Well, on Wednesday, July 24th at 12 noon, we're going to be giving a webinar and discussing everything you need to know about inflation. In this 40-minute webinar, you're going to learn how inflation works, how high prices could go, and will prices go back to where they were before inflation, plus a case for the fact that, hey, inflation may already be over with. Plus, what about mortgage rates and credit card rates? Where will they ultimately be? In a very easy-to-understand presentation, you'll also learn the Federal Reserve Board's role in inflation and why they might be more powerful than the president. Finally, what will the ultimate effect be on your retirement, and what might happen to bonds that no one's going to see coming? The webinar is on July 24th at 12 noon. To sign up, go to www.prudentmoney.com. and look for the webinar page. We are looking forward to seeing you there.
This is Rob Randall, your host and teacher of the Invisible War radio program. The Invisible War is the study of God's Word on how to walk in Christ's victory in the spiritual battles we face against the powers of darkness. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 right here on KDKR and KYJC in Commerce, your station for life.
In our broken world, it takes courage and drive to live faithfully for God. And Tuesday on Focal Point, Pastor Mike Fabarez shows how the Apostle Paul modeled radical endurance, even when facing persecution and being stoned nearly to death. If you're wrestling with disillusionment or feeling too weary to keep standing for truth, this could be the wake-up call you need. Listen Tuesday to Focal Point.
Focal Point, weekday mornings at 8:30, here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We're talking about, do you have your estate in order? So that, and this goes beyond, the assumption is you've done the life insurance, you've done the wills, you've done the trusts, you've done all that. But there's just, you find that you and your spouse are not on the same page because you have not adequately communicated it to your spouse. And I've seen where the wife takes care of everything, and I've seen where the husband takes care of everything. And there comes a point where the spouse that's just, you handle it, gets to the point where they want to know what happens if this happens. So the first thing that I would do is start out with a checklist and jot down everything that needs to happen. And you got to think of everything from transfer of assets. So which is pretty easy if it's going to a spouse. Let's talk about it from the standpoint of a spouse. You'd want to make sure that all banking accounts that you and your spouse were listed on that account so they can get access to any of the banking accounts. You would want to make sure that the beneficiaries are correct on 401ks, on IRAs, on life insurance, because the beneficiary trumps everything. Whatever's on that piece of paper, and signed piece of paper, is what the law will recognize as who gets the money. I'll never forget, this one story really left an impression on me. I had a client tell me that she had just gotten married, and her husband at the time was divorced. And so she said her husband also flew airplanes, and he was about to leave for a trip. And she said, why don't you go and make sure that you've changed all the beneficiaries out? And of course, he hadn't. So he went online and changed the beneficiaries, and got on the plane crashed, he died. And if he would have not have gone through that process of changing the information, it took him, I think, 10, 15 minutes to do, then his ex-wife would have gotten 100% of those assets. So if you've been through a divorce, gotten remarried, double check your beneficiaries, because there is absolutely nothing anybody can do, not that I know of anyway, and that ex-spouse or whomever's on that beneficiary designation is gonna get that money no matter what. So make sure that you have all the accounts pointing where they're supposed to. If you have any debt, have a inventory of that debt, who to call, what the account number is, and then make sure that your spouse has access to 401k plans, has telephone numbers to call, to have money transfer. But the best thing that you can do is you can put all this together, then get with either, if you've got a financial advisor and you want I think the best thing you can do is have a financial advisor play this role in your life. But have a financial advisor familiar with everything and say, if something happens to me, my wife or husband know to call you and that you'll take care of everything. And that, to me, is worth everything to be able to do that. That way without any question that, because this financial advisor, that advisor is going to take care of everything. If you don't have a financial advisor, this is one reason why it would probably be good to get one. Now, having said all that, you also want to make sure that there is language in the will document or trust document, whatever you have there, that would state that the advisor does get compensated based on current hourly rates. Also with this, you want to make sure that you have power of attorney set up on each other so that you can take care of things if your spouse cannot cognitively take care of anything. And then you also have to look at it from the standpoint of what happens if my spouse and myself have an untimely death. Now, I always call this the nuclear option. If you've got young kids, or really 20, I would say any kids under, adult children under 30, I think it's good to have a trust set up, 'cause that way everything goes into the trust. The trust dictates where everything goes. And of course, you have to be smart about that from a tax standpoint. But once again, if you've got one person, one advisor that can handle everything, that knows where everything is, and can make that process easy, you know, that I think that we sometimes forget that you've got the overwhelming grief of loss that you have to deal with in that situation. And then on top of that, you have a situation where you may have to worry about money. And that's just so not necessary, especially when you start to consider, if you haven't bought life insurance, how inexpensive term life is. And I've always been a big advocate of very inexpensive term life. You're just paying for the basic life insurance, nothing more. And but so very important if you especially if you have minor kids, that you've got to trust, because a trust deals out money for your kids' welfare, for college, to buy a car by a certain date, and there's a trustee that runs all that. And that way you don't have to worry about a thing, because you got everything covered. So these are just a few things that, and the best thing to do. Oh, well, let me back up too. You also need to check with, if let's say that you have a child in college. There's a special form, and I cannot think of what the form is called, but it is a form that you can call the school and ask. In fact, they may even supply you with one, and you can fill it out and sign it. Of course, you have to have it in. You have to have it notarized. But the form is a power of attorney type document that allows for you to get information on your child, because there's a lot of HIPAA rules. There's a lot of things that are out there that could prevent you from getting information, and especially if there's a health situation. So make sure that you get that checked out. And I'll look that up, and I can't remember what the title of the form is, but I'll bring you back up probably on Wednesday. But this is one of the most important things I believe that you can do, is get your estate in order, give your spouse the peace of mind that everything's going to be okay financially. At least that's not going to be a stress, not going to be a concern, and you can get that taken care of. Does take some time to get done, but on the other hand, it's something that once again is probably one of the more important things you can do. And you really, once you get it done, you just have to make sure it stays up to date, and that's that's pretty easy to do. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Listen, Wednesday of this week, I know I've mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it one more time because I want to make sure everybody knows about it, is the webinar that I've put together talking about everything that you need to know about inflation. I think it is, especially as we get into the presidential elections and beyond, what that really means, what we can expect. And I'm going to go very global on the information because I believe anybody can understand this topic globally. But I'm going to be putting a lot of connect the dots for you so that for once and for all you'll understand, hey, that's what that means, or that's why that's the way that it is. This is what I can expect. This is going to get better. This is going to get worse. And the bottom line, once again, it's not that inflation is a problem, because it is. Higher prices makes it tougher for everybody. It is a symptom of a bigger problem. And that's what I want to make sure that we transition into that topic and make sure you have a good feel for that. So a lot of information we're going to cover. I'll keep it on time, because I know you got other things to do on a Wednesday, like maybe you work. So noon, sign up at prudentmoney.com, and we will look forward to seeing you there. Once again, this is a webinar I've been meaning to do for a while now, and very excited about doing it. I think it's going to be, you'll find a lot of it very interesting and very understandable. This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.